ॐ
वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्म एदि वेदस्य म आनिस्तः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीरनेन अदितेनाहोरात्रान् सन्ददामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः नारायणं निखिलपूर्णगुणैकदेहं सर्वज्ञम् अच्युतम् अपेतसमस्तदोषम् प्राणस्य सर्वचिद् अचित् परमेश्वरस्य साक्षात् अधीश्वरमियां शरणं रमेशम्. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening for satsangis who have joined for part 2 of Aitareya Upanishad. So last week we had, I would say it's part A of the basics or the introduction to Aitareya Upanishad. So last week we had a overview of the Daso Upanishads, and we understood that Aitareya Upanishad is part of the Rig Veda. Previously we have done Mundaka, Mandukya, Chandogya, Kena, Katha, and Isha. And now we are doing in 2026, we are doing Aitareya Upanishad. Now, Aitareya Upanishad is one of the most celebrated Upanishads in our Sanatana Dharma. It also goes with various names, which again gives you an illustration of how great this Upanishad is. It's called Mahabhuti Shruti, Mahavibhuti, Maha Aitareya Upanishad, Bahvricha Upanishad, Maha Aishwarya Upanishad. So all those beautiful names that this Upanishad has got, for the obvious reason that it's a great piece of work talking about the philosophy of the Supreme Being. So last week we also touched upon the various how the Upanishad is structured. So we understood that there are 9 adhyayas and there are 38 khandas. So it's a big Upanishad, and that is the reason why it's called Maha Aitareya Upanishad. Okay. So we also reviewed, we also understood that this Upanishad comes from the Ashvalayana Shake Upashake, preserved by Ashvalayana Rishi and his descendants. And there are three renowned Bhashyakaras or commentators on the full Aitareya Upanishad, that is the 9 adhyayas and 38 khandas. So they include Sayanacharya, Shadguru Shishya, and Madhvacharya, have given a complete commentary of the Aitareya Upanishad. Last time we also looked at the historical perspective with regards to Shankaracharya giving commentary of the 4 adhyayas within the second Pragataka. Whereas Sayanacharya, Shadguru Shishya, and Madhvacharya, they're given the commentary on all the 9 adhyayas, which is classically called the Maha Aitareya Upanishad. Okay. So again, previously we looked at how the Aranyakas are split. So you have the Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, and the Upanishad. So in the Aitareya Aranyaka, there are what are called as Pragatakas, Aranyakas, Pragatakas. Okay. So there are 3 Pragatakas, says Sayanacharya and Shadguru Shishya, whereas Madhvacharya goes back even before Sayanacharya from ancient references, and he tells us, informs us that there are 2 Pragatakas. And the tail end of the second Pragataka, you have the Mahanamni Kanda. Okay. So Sayanacharya says that the Aitareya Upanishad includes Pragataka 1 and Pragataka 3. So in Pragataka 2, there are 7 adhyayas, and in Pragataka 3, there are 2 adhyayas. Shadguru Shishya informs us that there are 3 Pragatakas. So they both agree that there are 3 Pragatakas. Whereas it is the second Pragataka has got 6 adhyayas, and the third Pragataka has got 3 adhyayas, again totaling 9 adhyayas. Srimad Acharya goes back even to an ancient reference and tells us, look, there are 2 Pragatakas, Pragataka 1 and Pragataka 2. The sixth Adhyaya of Pragataka 1 and the eight Adhyayas of Pragataka 2 form the Aitareya Upanishad, again 9. Okay, so there is no confusion there. Aitareya Upanishad has got 9 Adhyayas and it's got 38 Khandas and it's predominantly in prose form. And last week we also looked at the certain special features of Aitareya Upanishad, how Srimad Acharya throughout his 79 years of his presence, at least to our darshana, to our perception, that he was in Rajata Pitapura or Udupi as it's called, from 8 years to 79 years. Srimad Acharya, in his biography from Narayana Panditacharya, we understand that Aitareya Upanishad comes again and again in his lifespan, starting from 8 years as Vasudeva giving Guru Dakshina to Totan Tillaya, and then later on as Purna Prajna giving Guru Dakshina to Achyuta Preksha, i.e., teaching Aitareya Upanishad. And as Madhvacharya, he teaches Satyatirtha thrice, and also he does a famous discourse in Payaswani river. Okay, and then as Anumana Tirtha, as we know, this particular piece of work has got 1,500 granthas. Okay, so it's a big piece of work. And then, of course, Ananda Tirtha's final discourse before he departs to Badri for the third time is about Aitareya Upanishad. So we understood there that Aitareya Upanishad is very, very dear to Srimad Acharya. And it is dear to Srimad Acharya for an obvious reason. Why? Because this Upanishad talks about Vishnurahasya. The glories of Vishnu is the primary theme of Aitareya Upanishad. There are various other vidyas that we will navigate through in this. Okay, so there are various important concepts. Primarily, it talks about the glories of Vishnu, and that is why it is a favorite Upanishad of Srimad Acharya. So also we touched upon two important aspects of Aitareya Upanishad, what we call as Sarva Shabda Vachyatva of Brahman, and we also understood what is Brihati Sahasra. Because this is important. Without having a background of Brihati Sahasra, we will not be able to understand the Aitareya Upanishad. Okay, so Aitareya Upanishad is basically an exposition or giving the philosophical description of what happens in Mahavrata Yajna. So for that, we have to go to the Brahmana portion of the Aitareya. So Aitareya Brahmana is Chatvari Vimshat. It's got 40 chapters. Okay, and in that 40 chapters, one portion talks about this yajna or the fire sacrifice that goes on for a year called Gavamayana Yajna. So in that yajna portion that needs to be done over 1 year, there is one important yajna that needs to be done within the Gavamayana Yajna called Mahavrata. Okay, Mahavrata, Indra does Mahavrata after killing Vratasura, and then he becomes Mahendra. Okay. So in the Mahavrata Yajna, it's a big Yajna where you do Yajna in the morning and in the afternoon and in the evening, and you're reciting various mantras by the Hotru. So you have the Hotru, Advaryu, Udgatru and Brahman. Hotru is from the Rig Veda. Udgatru is from Samaveda. Advaryu is from Yajur Veda. And Brahman is the supervisor who ensures that these three guys are doing their jobs properly. So in that particular Mahavrata Yajna done in morning, afternoon and evening, afternoon part of that Yajna becomes interesting. That is the afternoon part of the Mahavrata Yajna, where the Hotru recites these Shastras or the mantras. The Shastras, mantras are called Shastras as recited in the Rig Veda. Okay. When they are put in music, they become stotra. So this Hotra recites this sets of Nishkaivalya Shastra mantras. Okay. So these mantras are called Brihati Sahasra mantras, or they are also called Brihadukta mantras. Okay. So this is the background to this about Brihati Sahasra and Brihadukta mantras. And Brihati Sahasra is directly related to Vishnu Sahasranama, which is very popular. So that is the background to that. Why do we talk about this? Because the whole purpose of Aitareya Upanishad, which comes in the Aranyaka section, is actually to give us the philosophical understanding of what this Mahavrata Yajna is all about and what this Brihati Sahasra verses is all about. So the Brihati Sahasra is the food for Brahman. Okay? So that is the view. And the Upanishad, right in the very first Adhyaya, it takes this up. And throughout the Upanishad, it goes back again and again to Brihati Sahasra, Mahavrata, and so on. So this background is important. And as we navigate some of these mantra verses, we'll go back to Brihati Sahasra again and again. Okay? So that makes it really, really interesting, where you have an Upanishad which actually reviews the Brahmana portion of the soul of the Rig Veda. So as we kind of reminded ourselves last week, Rig Veda is allegedly the most ancient text of mankind. And in that, Aitareya Brahmana is the most ancient prescriptions for various fire sacrifice. And Aitareya Upanishad is the most ancient Upanishad that actually gives you the philosophical discussion of what the yajnas is. And again, this is something that we think about in our satsang as a group, is when we do fire sacrifice, when we do yajna, we just don't literally sit in front of a fire and throw things at it. It has got deep philosophical meanings, which is what the Aitareya Upanishad has set out to talk about, essentially saying Brihati Sahasra is a celebration of Brahman and its supremacy. Vishnoho sarvottamatvameva mahatatparyam sarvagamanam, as Acharya said in Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya. In Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya, he made it very clear to all of us that the whole essence of all the scriptures is to talk about the Sarvottamatva of Vishnu Tattva. So that is exactly what Aitareya Upanishad sets out to give us a view about. Okay. So the other aspect to this particular introduction that we did last week is also about the Sarva Shabda Vachyatva of Brahman. Okay, so I just want to break there for a minute and try to understand, what does it actually mean? Okay, yes, it's all very well good and said, oh, all sounds, words, everything is a glorification of Brahman. Okay, is that enough just to say that, oh, all sounds, all letters, all words are the glorification of Brahman? Why is it so? Okay, so we are rational beings, right? We ask this rational question as to why should it be that every sound and word in the universe should be a celebration of Brahman? What is the background to it? So I just want to break there for just 10 seconds and see if we want to we have some ideas and thoughts about this. What is the scientific basis of saying Sarva Shabda Vachyatva? Forget about those schools that talk about Avachyatva of Nirguna Brahman. That again is their problem. I don't know how they can. If Avachyatva of Nirguna Brahman is there, Nirguna Brahman can never be known. If Nirguna Brahman can never be known, Brahmatma Aikya can never be established. Okay, that is a problem of the monistic thinkers. But from our perspective, Sarva Shabda Vachyatva of Brahman is a doctrine. It's an axiomatic truth. Question is, why is it an axiomatic truth? Anybody wants to share their thoughts here, please? No problem. So I think the way to what I've tried to do in this particular slide is to try and bring a rational approach or a basis as to why do we say Sarva Shabda Vachyatva? What does it actually mean? To understand this, we really have to go to this whole framework in which the universe has come about. So it's a very deep concept. And when Srimad Acharya says Sarva Shabda Vachyatva, we have to take it very, very seriously because he means a very, very deep subject that is what is being discussed here. So we need to go right before creation. Yeah, when you and we have not yet come into samsara. So where are we? We are in the womb of Brahman, says the Vedas. All jivas of various types, Satvika, Rajasa, Tamasa, whatever types of jivas are out there, they're all in Brahman's womb. All the Tattvabhimani devatas are in the various, contemplations of various aspects of Brahman. So these white dots, let's say they are Tattvabhimani devatas, and then your ordinary souls like you and me, we are in the womb of Brahman. That is the pre-creation state called Agre. what happens in creation. So, after the end of Pralaya, when Narayana decides, okay, I want to start the creation now, okay, when that prompting happens, what happens at that point? Yeah. So, we have understood that in the very first sutra of Brahma Sutra, when the sutra says Om Atato Brahma Jignasa, we should remember the Om Ata Ataha. Om Atataha. So the Vedic cosmology is when Brahman decides that he wants to bring universe into being, he says Om Atataha. When that vibration then stirs up the Mula Prakriti or the primordial matter or the point of singularity, you may want to call it as a point of singularity. So that Om Atataha, when Brahman says that, Mula Prakriti is stirred. Lakshmi's creation, of course, is that her desire to bring forth the creation is her creation, that the Vedas tell us. So, Mula Prakriti and Lakshmi then says, let me bring forth the creation. So, then we know the rest. Mahat Tattva, Ahankara Tattva, Vaikarika, Tejasa, Tamasa. Then from Vaikarika, Manas components, Tejasa, Indriyas, Tamasa, Ahankara gives Panchatanmatras and Panchabhutas. So this whole thing then becomes, this is the Brahmanda, right? The 24 primordial principles together forms that golden egg called the Brahmanda. And then the evolutions of living beings and everything, like you and me occupying a Pindanda and everything else evolves. So the very first thing we need to remember there is Om is the name of Paramatma. Om iti Brahma, Aitareya Upanishad. And of course, Krishna in 1723 has already said, Om Tat Sat iti Nirdeshaha. My name is Om Arjuna. And who is that Om? Om iti Brahman, Brahma, Aitareya Upanishad. Okay. So Omkara is a name of Paramatma. It gives us, and of course, we have done those sessions of Omkara. It gives us a whole lot of meaning of what that Omkara is and why is it the name of God, because it gives us the various concepts of God. We understand through Om what is that concept of God actually means. And it also becomes interesting during creation when Paramatma says Om Atataha and then the creation comes into being. Okay. Yeah. And then not only that, but also then souls also come into being, and souls attached to a Pindanda is what the soul's creation is. Tattvabhimani devatas coming into creation means they take over the portfolios of various components of Brahmanda and Pindanda is their creation. Okay. So then what happens? The plot thickens there about this Om, because we know that this Om, that sound, the primordial sound that comes, that is Akara, Ukara, and Makara becomes the Pranava. That becomes the Vyahriti, Bhur, Bhuvas, Swaha. That becomes Pada 1, Pada 2, and Pada 3 of Gayatri. And that becomes Varga 1, Varga 2, Varga 3 of Purusha Sukta. And that becomes Padya, Gadya, and Gana. And that eventually is all sounds in the universe and all words in all the languages evolved from this Omkara. Okay? So our Catholicism says first there was the word. Okay, that is what Catholicism says. In Tamil, there is a very beautiful verse that Agaram Mudala Elittellam Adi Bhagavan Mugatre Ulagu, it says. Agara. Agara means Akara. Okay, that is Paramatma. And all sounds come from this. So you have the Namatmaka Prapancha. So the names of things, the names of objects in the universe, they all emanate from this Omkara. That is how the sounds of the universe are created. That is called Namatmaka Prapancha Srishti. Okay. Then you have this Brahmanda and Pindanda coming into being after Brahman has said Om Atataha, and the Brahmanda comes into being and the Pindanda comes into being. And once the Pindanda comes, what based on our karmas, we occupy various bodies and then we go through samsara. Okay. So this objects in the universe is called Rupatmaka Prapancha. So the Rupatmaka Prapancha, the starting point for how the Rupatmaka Prapanchas evolve is from Om Atataha, and then from Mula Prakriti. It comes, we know in Mula Prakriti, what is it? The Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are in equipoise, they are in equilibrium. When Om Atataha is said by Brahman, it stirs a vibration, and then the mixing up of things happen. And that is how the universe come into being, is the Vedic cosmology, which is fantastic cosmology. Okay? Very, very attuned with our modern cosmologists, what their thinkings are. Okay? So you have Namatmaka Prapancha and the Rupatmaka Prapancha all have a common ancestry. What is that? Om. They're all emanating from that. What actually creation is? Nama, Rupa, Vyakarana. That is what is the full creation. Okay. So here, when that Nama, Rupa, Vyakarana happens, what is that is being created? We have looked at it in so many Upanishads before. Mundaka Upanishad, Yata Urnanabihi Srujate Gruhnate Cha, Yata Prutivyam Oshadayaha Sambhavanti, Tata Sataha Purushat Keshalo Mani, Tata Aksharat Sambhavati Iha Vishwam. That is a beautiful verse that summarizes the whole creation that we have just discussed. Just like how from the spider the web comes, similarly the universe comes from Mula Prakriti and all others. Okay. Jivas, as per their swabhava, they grow. And that this is a spontaneous act. It is a very effortless act by Paramatma. Okay. And we will come to the nuances of Brahman's creation a little bit later, as how Brahman not only creates, but he also pervades into all his creation. Antarbahishta tat sarvam vyapya Narayana stitaha. As Mahanarayana Upanishad, Narayana Sukta of Yajurveda, that tells us very, very clearly. Okay. Namatmaka prapancha, Rupatmaka prapancha. What is the full creation all about? Nama, Rupa, Vyakarana. Every object in the universe is linked with a name. Okay? That is creation. Full creation means that we may be able to name certain objects in this universe with some names. There are so many other objects for which we do not know the name, but they all have a name, okay, says the Vedas. So that linking between an object and its name actually is full creation. And when you think about that, they all stem from Omkara. Okay, there is your link about Sarva Shabda Vachyatva of Brahman. Okay, this is where the basics. Our Acharya, Srimad Acharya, goes to the right basics of this concept of Sarva Shabda Vachyatva. And in Aitareya Upanishad, this is a practical application of Sarva Shabda Vachyatva that we see in Aitareya Upanishad. Okay, so I think this, we need to think about this fundamentals of Sarva Shabda Vachyatva very, very carefully, because it is a profound philosophy. The reason being, every object in the universe has got a name. That name actually has evolved from Om. Om is the name of Paramatma. So in that sense, every object's name in its most deepest sense, what we call as Parama Mukhya Vritti, actually is the name of Paramatma. That exactly is what Sarva Shabda Vachyatva is all about. And of course, the meanings of words in languages is complicated, right? Not only in Sanskrit, but also other languages that have come from Sanskrit. They are all various types. So the meanings of word is called vritti. Okay? The vritti, there are two types of meanings you can get from words. Either it is mukhya vritti. Mukhya means it's shakti. That is the word, the whatever object a word denotes, literally, that is the mukhya vritti. Then you have the metaphorical sense, similes, and so on. That's called lakshana vritti. Okay. So in the mukhya vritti, and this is the beauty of our tradition, all these concepts about language is very clearly dissected out in the sanatana dharma. And our rishis tell us each word there are various types of meanings. Rudi, yoga rudi. You can go and check that out. I think we did that when we did the Brahma Sutra session a few years ago. In the Tattu Samanvayat section, we did this particular concept about what are the meanings of word. Rudi Artha, Yoga Rudi, so on. But when we take up Sarva Shabda Vachyatva based on this concept, every word, be it Rudi, Yoga, Yoga Rudi, they have a deep sense, meaning. That is called Paramamukya Vritti. Okay? And from this slide, we understand that in the deepest sense, all names and sounds are names to glorify Brahman. This is what Sarva Shabda Vachyatva is. Okay? This Brahman, I've just picked up 3 Brahma Sutras here of Veda Vyasa, just to give us this idea about how that would operate. Okay? So, Sarvatra Prasiddhopadeshat. This Brahman is all pervasive, and in every object, he is inside every object. Every object has got a name, and those names have evolved from Om, which is the name of Brahman. So, in the deepest sense, every object in the universe that has a name ultimately has a meaning that glorifies one of the infinite attributes of Brahman. Okay. Now there are so many components of the Brahmanda that are under the control of Tattvabhimani Devatas, right? And we have done that in Keno Upanishad and Atharvana Upanishad, Atharvana Upanishad, and so on. So wherever there is a Jada component, there is always a sentient component that controls it. Abhimani Vyapadeshastu Visesha Anugatibhya. Brahma Sutra 216. Okay. Now our Brahma Sutra clarifies that, of course, with things like Antaryami Brahmanam or Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, to say that in every Tattvabhimani Devata there is inside the Tattvabhimani Devatas and also all the Jivas, there is an Antaryamin. Antaryami yadi Daivadishu Tadharma Vyapadeshat. Okay. So these 3 sutras are very, very important, I believe, to understand Sarva Shabda Vachyatva, because every soul, whether we are familiar with or not, from a Vedic perspective, every soul has got a name. Okay, we don't know what our name is. When we go to moksha, we may know it. Every soul has got a name. So every soul's inside there is an Antaryamin. So the name the soul gets is actually the name of the Antaryamin. Okay. Every Abhimani Devata that controls a component of the universe has got a name or a post, but the name of those posts have evolved because of Brahman being inside them as their Antaryamin. Every object of the universe has got a name, and those names have evolved from Omkara, which is a celebration of Brahman. So every object's name is also a name of Brahman. Okay. This is like when I say coconut. This coconut can mean a coconut in the tree, or you can remove the outer coating and you can see this brown thing, which is also called coconut. Or you can break open the coconut and you can see the white pulp there, that is also called the coconut. Or it can even be the fluid, the rasa that is there, that is also called coconut. That is why in Aitareya Upanishad, when the Rishi says Raso Vai Saha, that rasa is the innermost component that you are after, which is the Paramamukya Vritti, which is what the Sarva Shabda Vachyatva actually is. Okay, so I hope that these couple of slides gives us an introduction to this concept, because think about this, because it's only once we have this firmed up knowledge of what Sarva Shabda Vachyatva is, then you will be able to really appreciate the beauty of Aitareya Upanishad. Okay. And of course, the whole of Samanvaya Adhyaya of Brahma Sutras. So I'm going to break there for a minute. Quick quiz. How many aphorisms are there in Brahma Sutra? Who wants to answer that?
564.
Thank you, Anandji. How many Adhyayas are there in Brahma Sutra?
4.
Fantastic. What are the names of those Adhyaya?
Samanvaya Adhyaya, Avirodha Adhyaya, Nyaya Vivaran, no, Falash, something else.
Sadhana Adhyaya.
Sorry, so Sadhana Adhyaya, third Adhyaya, then?
Samanvaya, Sadhana, Avirodha, Phala.
Phala Adhyaya.
Very good. Okay, beautiful. So Samanvaya Adhyaya, Avirodha Adhyaya, Sadhana Adhyaya, Phala Adhyaya. Beautiful. So the first Adhyaya, Samanvaya Adhyaya of Brahma Sutra, The whole purpose of the Samanvaya Adhyaya of Brahma Sutra is actually to establish Sarva Shabda Vachyatva of Vishnu over 135 sutras. Okay, starting from Tattu Samanvayat, that is the fourth sutra, right? Tattu Samanvayat. So Veda Vyasa actually takes a whole lot of effort to inform us, guys, the first Adhyaya, every word in the universe is a celebration of Brahman. And there are two types of sounds, Varanatmaka Shabda, Dhvanyatmaka Shabda. Dhvanyatmaka Shabda is like the sound of the ocean, the sound of the waves in the beach, the sound of the river, the sound of wind blowing, the noise a lizard makes, those are all sounds. Okay. Varanatmaka is the Varana that becomes the language. Samskrita, for example. So in that you have Anyatra Prasiddha, Ubayatra Prasiddha, Anyatraiva Prasiddha, and then in that Namatmaka, Lingatmaka and all that. So you can read up all this. That is what the Samanvaya Adhyaya is all about, is actually to establish the Sarva Shabda Vachyatva of Brahman. Okay. And how do we do that? How do we do the Samanvaya or Sarva Shabda Vachyatva of Vishnu? That is what Vedas is all about. That is why Vedas are called Chandas. And our gurus like Bandanji remind us, Chandas means what? Chadayanti hava enam chandamsi. So you have to break open the Vedic words. Only when you break it open and go deep inside, you will actually understand what the Paramamukya Vritti of that is and how it glorifies Vishnu. Okay. So, so these are all the beauties of these discussions about this Sarva Shabda Vachyatva. Okay. So having done a basic to Brihati Sahasra, and I think we have done reasonable justice to understand actually what the Sarva Shabda Vachyatva concept actually means. Now we are going to make a proper pravesha into Aitareya Upanishad. Okay. So Aitareya Upanishad, whenever we do Upanishad, what did we say last week? We should always think about Rishi, we should think about Devata, we should think about Chandas, the meters. And we said in Aitareya, primarily it's in Gadya form or prose, so we don't have to worry too much about Chandas. We need to think about who the Rishi is and who the Devata is. This is very interesting, and I'll come to that in the next slide. So the Rishi for this Chandas is, for this Upanishad, is primarily a guy called Mahidasa Aitareya. He is the Rishi. Okay. And the Devata for that is also Mahidasa Aitareya. Okay. Devata means what? Which, you're talking about Vishnu, right? Which form of Vishnu is the Devata here? Mahidasa Aitareya. Who is the first Rishi of this Upanishad? Mahidasa Aitareya. There are also other rishis, Rama, Chaturmukha Brahma, Mukhya Prana, and of course Srimad Acharya. There are so many other rishis, but the first rishi is Mahidasa Aitareya. The Devata for this Upanishad is Mahidasa Aitareya. Hold on to that idea, and we'll come to that in the next slide. How can there be an Upanishad where the rishi and the Devata are one and the same? Okay, hold on to that thought. We'll come to that in a minute. Okay, so the Devata here is Mahidasa Aitareya, and Aitareya, starts with A. Aha iti Brahma. So Akaranamaka Paramatma is the Devata for this Upanishad. And Aha iti Brahma says the Aitareya Upanishad itself. Who is this Brahma? Brahma Shabdashta Vishnaveva, as our Srimad Acharya has established in Brahma Sutra Bhashya. So Vishnu is the Devata. So if the Vedas say Mahidasa Aitareya is the Devata, then we can in that way conclude that Mahidasa Aitareya is Vishnu himself. I'll come to that in a minute again. So again you go to the Omkara. It becomes very important. Om is what? Akara, Ukara, Makara, and then you can include Nada into it, and then there are also other four components. For our philosophical contemplation in this context, we take up Akara, Ukara, Makara, and Nada. So we have done this Omkara Chintana quite a lot. The four components of Om, Akara, Ukara, Makara, and Nada. Why are there four components? There are so many reasons, but the primary reason is they actually give us a view of the Vyuha forms of Vishnu. Okay. When I say Om, I'm actually contemplating on the Vyuha forms of Narayana. What are the Vyuha forms? Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva are the four Vyuha forms of Narayana. And they are represented by what? Akara, Ukara, Makara, and Nada. Okay. What do they indicate in our conscious states? Which forms of this Vyuha forms of Narayana controls the conscious states of jivas in samsara? Vaishwa, Tejasa, Prajna, Thurya. What states of consciousness of the jivas do they control? Jagrati sthanaha, swapna sthanaha, sushupti sthanaha, and of course the liberated state called chaturtha. That is what Thurya literally means, is the fourth state, liberated state. So in the Upanishads and in the Vedas, wherever you see four or you see five, okay, you will come across this in Aitareya Upanishad, for example. Hopefully we'll do it next. In Aitareya Upanishad, it's all about fives. There's always these fives that come in Aitareya Upanishad, which talks about essentially Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, Narayana. In Aitareya Upanishad, you will see four talking about Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, the four Vyuha forms of Narayana. Okay. So that is another interesting feature of the philosophy of Aitareya Upanishad, because we need to have this background. We need to know about the Omkara. Then we need to know about the various states. And for us as Satsangis, this almost is second nature, because we have done this all before. And that is why getting that foundation right is absolutely essential before we even become qualified to enter into Aitareya Upanishad. Okay, so hope that introduction makes sense. Okay, here is the next question. Anandji was bringing up this idea in our discussions post, following on from last week. He had kind of, thinking about this problem as to how can the same person be the Rishi and Devata. Anandji, do you want to just come back and then post that thought of yours, and then we'll take it up from there?
Yeah, usually Rishi is the one who has heard that Shruti, who is the seeker of that particular Upanishad. If we say Vishnu himself or Brahman himself for the first time saw that particular Shruti, does it not mean that Lord did not know that Shruti before? Because he is Sarvagna. So it casts a bit of a doubt there. So how do we do a samanvaya there? That was my question.
This is a beautiful question, Anandji. Anybody wants to take this up? Anybody wants to share their thoughts on this?
Namaskar, Anandji, Madhuji.
Yeah.
My thought here is the Lord himself leads the way for us towards salvation. As the Guru and as the Shishya.
Yeah, okay. So
is Lord born as Aitareya, that is his avatara as Aitareya. That is why.
Yeah.
No, but it doesn't suit the definition of a Rishi. The definition of a Rishi is for the first time somebody saw that. Like Gayatri, Brahma Gayatri or Vishwamitra Gayatri. We say a Rishi of that particular thing is. So God cannot see for the first time because he is Sarvagna. He already knows everything. So how do we define?
Maybe that it is the first time that he has said it to others doesn't mean he didn't know about it before.
Super. Okay. All interesting ideas there. So yeah, I think Sushrut is getting close to that answer. Sorry, who's the other one? Somebody.
That's me, Deval.
Deval. Yeah, go for it.
I'm just because you're talking so much about consciousness. When we did Mandukya Upanishad, there is the stage where you and Atma and Paramatma is together in the deep sleep. So if they are seeing each other, that can explain this. I'm just, because you are talking a lot about consciousness, I'm just
no problem. Thank you.
that.
Yeah. Thank you, Devalji. So if there are no further, Saptarshiji, go for it.
Yes, so in my opinion, regarding the question raised by Anandji, that in the Bhagavata also we can see the similar case that Vyasa is unsatisfied with what he has written. And the question can arise that he is Bhagavan himself, so how he can be unsatisfied? So it is not that he knows the answer, but he gives the opportunity to Narada to comes and tell him how what can be resolution. So in this case also, maybe he is just taking up that role so he can come and give the knowledge to others, because that is his greatness, right? That okay, I am the Lord and I am Sarvagya, but that is what he can come down to earth and he can be like behave like us, and he can also pretend that okay he doesn't know, and he can tell us okay how he is approaching the problem to find solution. That is my understanding here. Yeah.
Thank you, Saptarshiji. So yeah, very interesting discussions going on. So Anandji, I found the answer to your question in Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya Paricheda 1. Okay, so if you go to the Paricheda 1 of Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya, that talks about the Apaurushayatva of Vedas. How do we establish Apaurushayatva of Vedas? That is where your question is. How can a Rishi be Mahidasa and how can Devata also be Mahidasa? The first thing that we need to think about is what does the word Rishi actually mean? Anybody wants to tell us what the meaning Rishi actually means?
Rishi is a gnani who knows.
Yeah. Rishi is a jnani, yeah, sarvajna. So it's a rishajnane. Okay. So and there are various other etymology. Rishati iti rishihi, rishanti anena iti rishihi, and all that. We'll come to that. There is a verse here in Aitareya itself that talks about it. So Rishi is one who is knowledgeable. So as you rightly pointed out, our Vishnu is sarvajna. He knows past, present, and future simultaneously in all its infinite perspectives. So he is Sarvajna. Okay. So the first Rishi in that sense is Vishnu. Hayagriva Namaka Paramatma is the first Rishi for everything in the every Veda that is there. He is the first Rishi. He is the Sarvajna who knows this. Okay. So stick to that. If you can, what has happened here? Sorry. So if you hold on to that idea, Srimad Acharya gives reference to two, Brahmanda Purana and Mahavaraha Purana, to talk about the Apaurushayatva of Vedas. In that, just pick up the first one. Nitya Vedaha Samastasya Shashvataha Vishnu Buddhigaha. Okay, so this line is very important. Nitya Vedaha Samastasya Shashvata Vishnu Buddhigaha. So it is in the mind of Brahman eternally. It is not that when we say this Rishi for this Upanishad is Mahidasa Aitareya, that he did not know about this. Okay, all of the Vedas is in Vishnu Buddhigaha always. Yeah. So it is only Sarge Amunai Vete Udgiryante Tataivacha. And it goes on. So that is for another day. But the first line, Nitya Vedaha Samastascha Shashvataha Vishnu Buddhigaha. Okay. Yataste harina drishtaha shruta eva aparair janaihi. We mundane souls hear the Vedas, whereas our Vishnu sees the Vedas. There is a difference. Yataste harina drishtaha shruta eva aparair janaihi. Yeah, that is another interesting idea of Brahmanda Purana. So when we say Rishi is Mahidasa Aitareya, Anandji, there is also one view. If, for example, you're sitting in an examination hall and somebody says, okay, who is the Rishi for this particular mantra on Sukta of this particular mandala, this Sukta? If you don't know, you can safely say Hayagriva. Hayagriva Namaka Paramatma is the Rishi for this. Because he is the first Rishi. And it is because of his grace, other rishis like maybe Jamadagni and Vishwamitra, Madhuchanda Vaishwamitra, our Vishwamitra, they may be seeing something based upon their capacity. But original rishi is Bhagavanta. Okay. So, and here this Devata is Mahidasa Aitareya because he is the avatara of Vishnu. So in the, Neetaji was talking about this. Mahidasa Aitareya and Mahidasa Aitareya. Just because we say Brahman is a Rishi, Hayagriva Namaka Paramatma is Rishi, does not mean that he did not know this before. Brahmanda Purana has said Nitya Vedaha Samastasya Shashvataha Vishnu Buddhigaha. It is eternally always in Brahman's mind. So in that sense, in every creation, the same sequence keeps coming again and again. It is not that Brahman created it. It is eternally in his mind always. Okay, so I hope that kind of makes some sense. And this is what I was trying to bring in the slide. So for Narayana, Purvam Swaparagata Akhila Visesha Visayesham. We've done it in Pramana Lakshana. In Lakshmi, it is also the same, but slight difference in clarity. Then for Chaturmukha and Vayus, their knowledge is what? Sarvat asarvatrikam anyatra alochane sarva vishayam. So go back and think about the knowledge of others from Lakshmi and down. But for Narayana, it's always infinite magnitude, past, present, and future. So this Narayana is there. Then if you go to Srimad Bhagavatam, what does it say? Janmadhya seyato anvayad itaratashta arteshva bignaha swarat tene brahma hridaya adi kavaye. So this Hayagriva namaka Paramatma, out of love to his son Chaturmukha, he hands down the Vedas. Okay. Vedashta sarvair ahameva vedyaha, which is popular 15:15. Krishna is telling that I know all the Vedas. I didn't compose it because it's always there in my mind. Vishnu buddhigaha, eternally. I know the Vedas. But Vedantakrit Brahma Sutra I've composed. So this Narayana, Hayagriva, Krishna is Mahidasa Aitareya. Okay, his Krishna is Narayana's avatara. Okay, and I think Srikanji was mentioning about, is this Mahidasa Aitareya has got an amsha of Vishnu, or is he an avatar of Vishnu? There was a conversation just before today's satsang. The view, I'll come to it in a minute, as the evidence is given by Srimad Acharya himself. Okay, who is this Mahidasa Aitareya is very important. Some folks unfortunately think he's just like another rishi. I'm not bringing down on rishis. We are nowhere near the rishis. Rishis are such exalted souls, but still they are infinitely lower than Paramatma. Okay, Paramatma is a different category. So Mahidasa Aitareya is not some rishi, as some schools make it to be, which is grossly unfortunate. He is not a rishi of the Aitareya Upanishad. So then the question is, who is he? Who is Mahidasa Aitareya? Okay. So who is Mahidasa Aitareya? The evidence is given by, so this is the introductory portions of the Aitareya Upanishad, where Srimad Acharya actually gives a background. From where? Iti Rik Samhitayam. He gives a background to who this Mahidasa Aitareya himself is. And of course, our gurus like Bandanji and others also pick up evidence from Padma Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam, and also Shadguru Shishya's commentary itself, and give us more background about who this Mahidasa Aitareya is. Okay, so let's spend a few minutes thinking about who this Mahidasa Aitareya is. Okay. So Anandji, here is your answer about who this Mahidasa is. Is he actually an avatar of Vishnu, or is he an amsha of Vishnu in the Mahidasa Rishi? Okay. The first line of Rik Samhitayam says, Pradur Babhuva Bhagavan Tapase Itaraya Narayano Abjaja Sutasya Vishala Namnaha. Okay. Narayano Abjaja Sutasya Vishala Namnaha. Narayana himself appears. Okay, born. Okay, there is your answer. So who is this Vishala? Vishala was a rishi. Okay, the son of Chaturmukha, says the scriptures. Vishala is a rishi. Okay, the background given in Padma Purana, Bhagavatam, and Shadguru Shishya's commentary gives a good view of what is happening. And of course, Samhitayam, Rik Samhita also gives us a background. So if you take the first line, basically what it says is, Bhagavan Tapase Itaraya. Itara, who is Itara? Itara is one of the wives of Vishala Rishi. Let's say second wife of Vishala Rishi, and he also had a first wife. The Upanishads or the Vedas don't tell us what the name of the first wife is, but it says the second wife, Itara, the other one. Itara literally means the other one, was called as Itara. Okay, that second wife, she didn't have kids, so she does tapasa. She does tapas. She does a penance. Okay, and then what happens? Pradurbhabuva Narayano Abjaja. Okay. So based on her tapas, Narayana himself is born to Itara. Okay. So because she is the mother and this Narayana appears in Itara Devi and Vishala, he gets the name Aitareya, Itara's son Aitareya. Okay. Like Uddalaka Aruni, Aruna's grandson Aruni, like that. Yeah. Madhuchanda Vaishwamitra. Who is Madhuchanda? Madhuchanda is the son of Vishwamitra. So he is called Madhuchanda Vaishwamitra. Similarly, Narayana is born from the penance of Itara Devi. So he is celebrated as Aitareya. Okay. So that is one view. So we understood that Aitareya is the son of Itara and Vishala Rishi. And of course, our Vishala also had other wives, first wife, and children. Okay. So we understand some background of Aitareya's childhood days from Padma Purana and Shadguru Shishya's commentary and Bhagavatam. Okay. So if you put that all this, I'll just summarize the story, which is very, very interesting. Okay. So apparently in his childhood, Aitareya was very naughty. Okay. Really naughty guy, always crying. Okay. Always crying and naughty. Who? Aitareya. Okay. And his mother once got fed up with this. So she is the second wife and she is being constantly insulted by the first wife, and Vishala is giving more attention to the first wife but not the second wife. Okay. And this baby is always crying and naughty. So Itara is fed up once and she says, why don't you just shut up? And she shouts and scolds Aitareya, just shut up. I'm fed up with you. Just shut up. I can't bear this. You are torturing me. My husband and my first wife, they're torturing me. Why don't you just shut up? Okay. So when Itara Devi said, shut up, Aitareya stopped talking. Okay. He stopped talking at that point. Okay. And as the child grew, yeah, this guy never talked, right? So they thought this guy was dumb and he cannot talk, he can't hear. Oh, it's just another child who is not going to go anywhere. So that is what everybody thought, including Itara Devi. Okay. And the child grew. Okay. And then, as the child grew, the Itara Devi had to tolerate insults not only done to her, but now to her son also, because this guy is dumb. He cannot talk. He just doesn't interact with anybody. He doesn't talk. So the Itara Devi has to tolerate all the insults, says the Puranas. Okay. Then the story goes that one day Vishala took his first wife's children and he had to go for a yagnashala. Some guy had invited him to perform, I don't know, some yagna. So our Vishala said, okay, I'll be the hotru for this. And he went and he dragged along the kids of his first children. Okay. So at that point, Bananji says this very beautifully in a very emotional way. He puts this. And he says at that point of time, Itara Devi is very upset. She says, Aitareya, you are dumb. You haven't learned anything. You are simply sitting there, useless. And then, I am of course constantly being insulted and tortured by my elder sister, if you want to call that, first wife, and Vishala. You are sitting there dumb. Look at my state of affairs. I've got a useless son and I'm useless. What do I do? And she's kind of, remorsing at that point. At that point, Aitareya apparently said, Mother, you only asked me to shut up. So I have shut myself up. You asked me to shut up. That is why I shut up. And Aitareya says, I know all the Vedas, mother. I know everything. I know all the Vedas that dad has been teaching his children and more. I know all the Vedas. You asked me to shut up, so I kept my mouth shut. So at that point, Itara is very happy. And she says, is that so? Okay, go to the dad. He's doing this yajna somewhere. Go and join him. You can also go and recite the Vedas. So our Aitareya then goes to that hermitage where Vishala has been invited to perform a yajna. So he goes there. And like how Dhruva went and sat next to his dad, he tried to go and sit on the lap of Vishala. Vishala at that point says, "Why have you come here?" And he pushes him because, he doesn't want to be identified with a dumb son of his. Okay, that was Vishala's view. He says, "Don't come and sit next to me. My whole prestige and my name in society will be spoiled if a dumb child sits on my lap." And he pushes him to the ground. He says, he just pushes him. Aitareya falls on the ground. Okay. Bhumi Devi observes this. Bhumi Devi, one of the incarnations of Lakshmi Tattva. Mahi, as she is called. Bhumi Devi is called Mahi. Mahi observes this and she is not able to tolerate the insult done to her husband, who is Aitareya. This Vishala insults my husband and pushes him to the ground. How dare he does that? So the Bhumi Devi at that point, it is said, she actually brings the earth, a portion of earth up, okay, and makes it as a throne for Aitareya to sit on that. Okay, so, and then at that point, as a child, Aitareya recites the whole of the Aitareya Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishads, everything he recites. And our gurus tell us that was the first time that the Aitareya was recited by Aitareya as a kid. By a throne brought about from earth by Bhumi Devi, who is his consort. Okay? So that is another interesting point. And when our boy Aitareya, who was considered to be a dumb fellow, recites the whole of the Aitareya Upanishad, the first five, is not only amazed, but she also then realizes the mistakes that she has done of insulting not only Itara, but also her son Aitareya. Okay, so Vishala's first wife then repents for the mistakes that she has done. Okay. So hold on to those ideas about Bhumi Devi, getting really upset with Vishala's behavior and then bringing the earth up. Aitareya goes and sits there, and Vishala's first wife feeling sorry, and then she also begins to worship Aitareya. Okay. All this is important because we understand why is this Mahidasa prefix used for Aitareya, Mahidasa Aitareya. So hold on to that idea. So as a kid, Aitareya has recited everything. Okay. So now Srimad Acharya in his Rik Samhitayam goes to another incident when Aitareya was, established himself as a great Vedic, he knew everything in the Vedas. Yeah. Tasmin gate advaram abut sura viprasango nischetanas tad anupadma bhavo amum astaut. Okay, and then we don't have time to go through all this verse, but basically what happens is once rishis and devatas were doing a yajna. Okay, at that point, Aitareya visited this yajna. Okay, and when Aitareya visited that yajna, all these rishis they were in utter shock and awe because they saw this lustrous person, the lustrous person with aura around him and the tejas that he had. He came to this hermitage and to this Yagnashala, and the rishis were completely amazed and they could not even say anything. They could not even say any further mantras because they were really dumbstruck at the greatness and the beauty of this Aitareya who visited that place. Okay, and at that point there is a conversation and they realize. So Chaturmukha and all the devatas realize that it is Aitareya, the Narayana himself, who is here, who has come here. Okay, and then they worship him. So our Acharya reminds that in Rik Samhitayam it says Mahatsuranam dasatvataha sa Mahidasa iti prasiddhaha, says Rik Samhita. Mahatsuranam, Suras means what? Devatas. Dasatvataha, they became his servants. Sa Mahidasa iti prasiddha. So that is why he is called Mahidasa, because all the suras became his dasas because of his lustrousness and his knowledge. Okay. At that point in that hermitage, again Aitareya gives the Aitareya Upanishad. He recites the Aitareya Aranyaka and the Upanishads, and it is said at that point, Bhagavan Avadat Ramayai Divyam Shrutim. So when Aitareya started teaching the Upanishad, Rama Devi, Shri Tattva, Lakshmi, she also comes there and says, I want to listen to this great knowledge that my husband is sharing along with Chaturmukha Brahma and other devatas. So Ramayai, she also listens to Divyam Shrutim. So this is called Divyam Shrutim is another name. Sa Paramo Atimuda Aitariyam. So this Parama Aitareya, he with lot of love, he taught this Upanishad to Rama first and then to all the other devatas and the rishis. What did he teach? Aitariyam. Okay. Because he first taught this to Rama. Rama is called what? Mahi. He's called Mahi, isn't it? So it is called Mahabhuti Shruti. Bhuti is also a name for Lakshmi. So he taught this to Bhuti. So that is why it is called Mahabhuti Shruti. Seisha Mahabhutir Yato Harihi. The real Mahabhuta is, of course, Hari. And that Hari teaches this to this Bhuti, which is Rama, and to all the other Devatas. So, Mahatsuranam Dasatvataha Samahidasa iti prasiddha. So that is the background. So I hope Srikanji, this Rik Samhitayam gives a clear answer as to who Mahidasa is. Ramadevi learns from him. Ramadevi can only learn from Narayana. Okay? So Mahidasa Aitareya is Narayana's avatara as per Srimad Acharya's Bhashya. He is definitely not an ordinary rishi. Okay? This is a message from Srimad Acharya, and again, this is a Shruti, this is a Upanishad that is directly taught by Narayana to Shri Tattva, and of course, their son Chaturmukha and Vayu are going to love this Upanishad. So, Mahatsuranam Dasatvataha Mahidasaha. And if you go back to that story, that beautiful story I mentioned about how Bhumi Devi could not tolerate the insult done to her husband by Vishala. So at that point, he could not tolerate the insult that has been done to her husband. So at that point, she gives an asana, right? Mahidatta asa iti mahidasaha is another etymology that's given by Bananji. Mahilamadasa, Mahidasa. Mahila, this first wife, understands and repents the mistakes that she has done, and she becomes the dasa of Aitareya. So Mahilamadasa, Mahidasa. So this is a kind of very beautiful background that our teachers give us, making it very clear that Mahidasa Aitareya is Narayana himself, who gives the Upanishad to Lakshmi and to everyone afterwards. Okay, so hopefully we will do the Shanti mantra, and then I want to somehow touch the first verse today. Let's see how it goes. So with that background as to how great Mahidasa Aitareya is, and understanding that the Rishi is Mahidasa, Devata is Mahidasa, we go to the Shanti mantra of the Rig Veda and the Shanti mantra of Aitareya Upanishad, which itself is beautiful. Why is it beautiful? For two reasons. First one, it is a student's prayer. So in that sense, we all sitting here in this satsang, we should do this prayer. Student's prayer to the Guru. That is first important reason why this mantra is beautiful. The other reason is this mantra is the 7th adhyaya of Aitareya Upanishad. Okay, this is one of the adhyayas of Aitareya Upanishad, and it comes later, and perhaps maybe when we navigate that, we can also pick this again. So how does this mantra goes? Vang me manasi pratishtita. Okay. When you literally take the meaning, it appears that Vang me manasi pratishtita. Let my speech be in my mind. Okay, that is the literal meaning. But our Srimad Acharya is very clear. What does manas actually mean? Manaha is a name of Paramatma. He who gives manana shakti to us is Manaha. Okay. Vang me manasi pratishtita. Let my speech be about God. Let my speech always rest fixed in God. Manas is you can take it as material manas, or you can take the Abhimani Devata of Manas as Rudra, but ultimately is the Antaryamin in Rudra who is called Manas. So right in the very first verse, we can see the Sarva Shabda Vachyatva coming out even in the very first line of the Shanti Mantra. Let my speech be about God always. Whether we do it or not, we don't know, but that is something for us to reflect. Manome vachi pratishtitam. Let God be present in my speech always. Okay. Avirma edi. Avirbhava means you, Paramatma, should reveal yourself to me. The student prays. Okay. Vedasya ma anistaha. Very beautiful statement. It is telling about where are you primarily based. Again, this is one of the key prana vidya that comes in this Aitareya Upanishad that we see in the Shanti mantra. Vedasya ma anistaha. O God, who is situated in Vayu, prana, whose Vedic knowledge is firmly fixed in you always. Vedas anistaha. Ashapta Shivashu Matrushu Matarishva, as we have seen in Isha Upanishad, exactly comes here. Vedasya ma anistaha. He who is always fixed in Vedas. Shrutam me ma prahasihi. In my Shastra Shravana, do not leave me. Okay, beautiful. I should only understand you always. Shrutam me ma prahasir. Anena aditena aho ratran sandadami. How many of us do this? I don't know, but I think we should. Let me study the scriptures describing you day and night always. May I be engrossed in your study always, is what the student is praying. Anena aditena aho ratran sandadami. Rutam vadishyami, says the student. Okay. When I teach, when I do, Swadhyaya I've done, and when I do Pravachana, Swadhyaya Pravachana of Aitareya Upanishad, let me always teach as I have studied. Okay. Yathartha Jnana Swarupa. Paramatma is called Rutam because he is Yathartha Jnana Swarupa. True knowledge is him. Yeah. I will teach as studied, known about God in the Vedas. Beautiful statement which Srimad Acharya has followed throughout as a student of Veda Vyasa. Srimad Acharya has followed this principle. What is that? Rutam vadishyami. I will teach you as studied. Why? Pustaka. What is there in the Pustaka? I will teach. Not what is there in the Mastaka and come up with some hypothesis and see that in the Vedas. No. Rutam vadishyami. Satyam vadishyami. We know what Satyam means. Satyam means not truth. That is a very literal sense. Satyam, we know that Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, and we have done the etymology of Satyam, which again comes in this Upanishad. Satyam is a name of Paramatma. Satyam vadishyami means I will teach God as Satyam. Okay. Tanmam avatu. Let that God protect me. Let God make me understand what is taught by the Guru. This is important. Even for us to understand something what our Gurus tell us, we need the grace of Paramatma. So that is what the student is saying. Tanmam avatu. Let that God make me understand what is taught by the Guru. Tad vaktaram avatu. Let that God protect my teacher so that he may teach well, says the student. Avatu mam, protect me, Paramatma. Avatu Vaktaram, protect the teacher so that we do Shastra studies properly. Okay, so that is a beautiful, beautiful. I mean, I can't tell you how beautiful this Shanti mantra is. So practical, not just for Vedic studies. In any aspect in our life, whatever teaching, whatever course that we do, whatever studies we do, you need a student, you need a guru. And for both of them to operate properly, you need a higher force that makes sure that everything is done properly. And that is what this prayer is all about. Avatu Vaktaram. Okay. Look at that beautiful verse. Avatu Vaktaram. Protect the teacher, but it comes twice. Avatu Vaktaram, Avatu Vaktaram. Why does it come twice? Two reasons. Stressing an important concept, but at the same time, if an adhyaya comes to an end, there is no full stop in Vedic system. You say it twice and you close that. Avatu Vaktaram, Avatu Vaktaram. Okay. That is what the seventh adhyaya of Aitareya Upanishad is, that talks about a student and a teacher's relationship, which is actually is the Shanti mantra of Rig Veda. And then what happens? It finishes off saying, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I want to break for a few seconds for us to think about what is the actual meaning of Shanti here. Okay, and again, our gurus teach us so many times, it is not peace, peace, peace. If we think it is peace, 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 then it is literally peace, peace, peace. You don't think it as P-E-A-C-E. If you think it as P-E-A-C-E, then it is P-I-E-C-E. It is useless for you, because that Shanti has a different meaning in the Vedic language. So who is going to share us the idea of what Shanti means? And then we'll close with just reciting the first mantra. So who is going to tell us what Shanti actually means? Yeah, Anandji.
Is it the peak of the bliss, the highest point of the bliss? Sham, Shanti.
Super. Thank you, Anandji. Anybody else?
Jnanananda Swarupa. Knowledge.
Jnanananda Swarupa. Pratibhaji, fantastic. So both of you got this right. So never forget what Shanti is. There are two things here. Once it is prefixed by Om. Why Om? And then it has got three Shantis, not four, not five, not two. All Vedic mantras will have three Shanti, 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 Shanti with the Om. Why? Om, Akara, Ukara, Makara. Three. Implying Shanti, 1, 2, and 3. Shanti, Sha, Anta, E, as Anandji and Pratibhaji were alluding to. Sha means Sham, Sham means bliss. E, Inugatau, knowledge. Okay. Anta, Parakashte, the highest levels of bliss and knowledge. Who has got the highest levels of bliss and knowledge? Omkara. Omkara Namaka Paramatma alone has this highest levels of bliss and knowledge. But for mundane souls like us, if we understand him properly and with his grace, we might attain our Purnata, where we will attain our quanta of bliss and knowledge. This Omkara is all pervasive in Bhurbhuvassuvaha 3. He is in 3 times, past, present, and future. He can be known through Rig, Yajus, and Sama. He is Jnananandamaya, infinite Jnananandamaya. May we attain our state of fullness and bliss. That is how this mantra, the Shanti mantra, closes, which itself is an amazing study. We can contemplate on the Shanti mantra itself for a long time. Okay, so we spent a lot of time in introduction. So again, it has taken us 2 sessions to actually think about the background to Aitareya Upanishad, which is, I believe is very, very important that we understand and we approach Aitareya in that anusandana. As our teacher says, we submit to the Aitareya Upanishad, not put our minds into it, but see it as it gives us the knowledge. Harihi Om, Yesha Pantaha, Etat Karma, Etat Brahma, Etat Satyam, Tasmat na pramade, tanna atiyat, nahi atyayan purve, ye atyayan te parababubuhu, taduktam rishina, prajahatisro, atyayam yur, nyanya arkam abito vivishre, Bruhattatastau Bhuvaneshwantaha Pavamano Harita Avivesheti is the first half of the first khanda of the first adhyaya of Aitareya Upanishad. So in the next satsang, we'll pick this up. Esha pantaha, etat karma, etat brahma, etat satyam. 4. That is the first 4 words that we need to dissect out what that means. Then the Upanishad says, don't surpass it. Tanna pramadit, don't forget it. Tanna atiyad, don't surpass it. Nobody in the past surpassed it. Nahi atyayan purve. Those who surpass it, ye atyayan te parababuhu. He will have the most miserable failure of his life. Those who surpass Brahman. And we have done what are the dveshas of Brahman. So in the very first verse, our Aitareya says, don't forget me, don't surpass me. There are so many ways of surpassing. One is thinking I myself is Brahman is one worst form of surpassing Brahman. Here Aitareya says very clearly, don't do that, mate. Okay, so what does it all mean? So we will pick it up in the next satsang. Sorry, I had to go a little bit longer because somehow I wanted to reach the first verse, and I've reached through God's grace and Vayu's grace again. So any questions at this point? Because this Upanishad is just incredible. Okay, I can't stress enough. There is so much to talk about this Upanishad. So let's close today and say Krishna Pranamastu. Open up briefly for any questions. Shrikantji?
Well, thank you very much, Madhuji. I appreciate the succinct clarification. As Mahidasa is not one of the 10 avatars, it's and in the Dvandva period, and they say Kali Yuga, there is no avatara. So hence the Amsha thing came up. Thank you very much. Clear. Thank you.
Beautiful, Shrikantji. Thank you very much. And also, Srimad Acharya has also spoken about another Aitareya. There is another Rishi, but not to be confused with the Aitareya of the Aitareya Upanishad. That is another point I wanted to also illustrate. Thank you, Shrikantji. Anything else? Yeah, Anand.
No, I just wanted to thank you, Madhuji, for clarifying Mahidasa as the Rishi of this Upanishad. And as is often said, Acharya has left nothing unturned. We have to look for the answers, and I'm so happy that you quoted some of his bhashya and answered that question. Thank you.
Super, Anandji. Thank you very much. On that note, Anandji, do you want to recite Om and then we'll close today's session?
Sure. Om.
Thank you, Anandji, and thank you, everyone. So see you next week. And also a very brief announcement. As you know, the next Gita Chintana is coming up end of the month. So hopefully we'll be able to provide some update next Sunday as well. So keep thinking about Aitareya Upanishad. We'll catch up again next Sunday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.